this Patron bonus episode, we're talking about 2019's Midsommar. Hello, patrons, and welcome back to another bonus episode of This Film Is Lit. I would normally say the show where we talk about movies that are based on books, but that the bonus episodes are not that. So that is not an accurate intro. The podcast where we talk about whatever thing we want, usually some random movie. And Midsommar has been on our list for a while.
Yeah, like since 2019.
Like since it came out, it was one of those that I was wanted to go see in theaters, and then just for whatever reason never did, which happens more often than not in terms of movie theater films. And then it just never got around to watching it again. And then we're working our way through the list on this bonus content, and so we finally watched Midsommar, and it's a whole movie. Mm-hmm. It's good. I mean, it's a good movie, but that is it's a wild film. We're gonna get into it because we got quite a bit to talk about. Spoilers abound if you have not seen Midsommar. We're gonna get into plenty of spoilers, pretty much from the jump. Go watch it if you want first. It's not streaming anywhere. We had to rent it, didn't we?
Yeah, it was. It might have been streaming somewhere that we didn't have access to.
Yeah, I think it might have been like a Showtime or a. Yeah, it was something. But anyway, it's not on a streaming platform that we have, so we had to rent it. But I had not seen Hereditary. This is I haven't seen any Ari Aster film. This is my first. You didn't see Hereditary, did you?
No, yeah, this was my first.
You saw. I always confuse those in my head, even though they're very different. With The Witch,
I have seen The Witch, and I thought that was Ari Aster, and then I looked, and it's not.
That's the guy who did The Green Knight.
Yeah,
and other stuff, but not. I can't remember that filmmaker's name now off the top of my head. But anyways, no, not Ari Aster. Because I thought the same thing. Like I always confuse Hereditary and The Witch, even though again they're not similar movies necessarily, other than being like kind of like modern horror films that people talk highly of. But they came out around the same time, and I think they had like similar black and white movie posters. So in my head they were like similar, but not at all. So I have not seen any Ari Aster films. This is my first. And that dude's got stuff going on. For sure.
So this movie opens with an illustration that kind of looks like a medieval painting. And I left a note for myself as we were watching the movie to go back and look it up because I couldn't really see like all of the details on it.
Yeah.
And they didn't like it.
It's like a storybook opening. It does like almost like a not storybook, like an old-timey play, like those plays with like the puppet shows where they would have like a I think that was a thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Kind of looked like that.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe.
But it wasn't, I didn't get a long enough and a good enough look at it. So I looked it up and I looked at all the details. And it's a really cool illustration. And
is it a real or is it for this movie? Like, is it a historical thing?
No, it's for this movie.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they just
it tells you the entire story.
Yeah.
Before the movie starts.
We actually have that happen again.
Yes.
Later with a different illustration.
With some foreshadowing.
But definitely it seems to be a fan of kind of laying everything out ahead of time.
So after that, there's some like Swedish singing and then some pastoral shots.
Throat singing and then a hard cut.
Hard cut.
And the music cuts off to modern day home.
Our protagonist, whose name is Danny.
Yes.
And she's got issues.
Oh, she's got a lot of stuff going on.
Got a lot of stuff going on. We open to her like calling her family, and it shows her parents like
missed calls.
A bunch of missed calls. Shows her parents presumably asleep in bed.
Yes.
And her like leaving a voicemail for them, and she's worried about her sister because she got a very concerning email from her sister, and I was like, okay, I see what this is about.
Yeah.
Because I've been her. So she's the eldest sister who is tasked with holding her family together.
Yeah.
And then she calls her boyfriend, and he's just kind of a dick.
Is she the oldest?
It doesn't say in
I thought
the
her
movie.
sister looked older than her, but
So it doesn't say in the movie. I tried to look this up, and I found like a Reddit post saying that in the script it says she's the oldest.
okay.
I don't know if that's true or not.
You only see her sister like once, and it's very
Yeah.
hard to tell. I mean, you could go either way with the
But
same age, but yeah.
She has eldest sister vibes.
Yeah,
Like big
yeah.
vibes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so she calls her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's like, "Oh, you know your sister always does this."
Yeah, he basically is just like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we get like, I don't think it goes like back and forth a few times here, but we get a cut of her like talking to somebody else about how she's worried about like putting too much on him and like overwhelming him.
Yeah, I think she calls a friend or somebody else and leaves a voicemail.
I don't think we ever know who she calls in that moment. She calls somebody and is like talking about how she's always worried that she's like putting too much on him, and she's too much and her emotions are too much.
Right.
Highly relatable moment.
Relatable content.
I honestly don't get freaked out right off the bat. I'm going to say relatable content a lot during this episode, and I will talk about why.
Yeah.
But then we cut to her boyfriend who's hanging out with some of his friends at a restaurant. And
Sid from Toy Story, that actor. that actor that literally just is Sid from Toy Story. Will Platt or something. Not Platt. Poulter.
Poulter.
Will Poulter.
Yeah, Will Poulter.
Literally
Just
never has a human being looked more like a specific cartoon
one
character.
of the most punchable faces in cinema.
Yeah.
And my only note from that scene was, ugh, men.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, they're specifically college aged.
Yeah.
Like
they're
the
like
worst
a little
demographic
like
of men.
they're like grad school aged because he's like working on his PhD or whatever.
Yeah, but still like early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Early
the
mid
worst
20s.
age of men.
And all his friends are like, "Oh, you have to dump her. She doesn't even have sex with you."
Yeah. Or not even that she doesn't, I think just not enough.
Yeah.
Well, because he says something about who you can find a girl who actually likes having sex, which to me implies like not that they don't have, but that it's like they don't have enough sex or whatever. Yeah. Again, was the vibe that I got from that conversation.
At which point he gets another phone call from her.
Or she's freaking out.
And she's just like screaming.
Yeah.
Cut to finding out that her sister not only did commit suicide.
Yes.
But also killed her parents.
Yeah. It's a fucking wild open that I was not expecting. I didn't know the setup at all.
No, I did not know the setup
like they
for
go
this.
visit this, pagan cult or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I knew that part. I didn't know the setup backstory for it. And yeah, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, so, and I was like, okay, so I knew this was not going to be an easy watch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had heard that, like, it's not, like, a fun, uplifting film necessarily. And, like, while it has some kind of silly moments and some comedy and stuff at times, and it is, like, an interesting film, I had heard, it's like, the rumor was, it's a rough film, but I assumed they meant, like, later. Like, the other stuff that happens, I wasn't expecting this part with the backstory with the parents. It's fucking brutal.
So her entire family is dead. Cut to opening title.
Yeah.
Because that was just the opening sequence.
Yeah.
We haven't even started the movie proper yet.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, so I think it's interesting is I know there's a big twist in Hereditary, kind of, and I almost feel like that happens, I think, like 2/3 through the movie or something like that. I don't know what it is. I've just always heard there's like a relatively large, like, kind of surprising moment. And I really feel like for this movie, it was the opening, like, 10 minutes. Again, I mean, not that other surprising stuff doesn't happen later, but by the time the stuff's happening later, I'm just fully expecting anything to happen. Like, so it wasn't that surprising, but the backstory opening, I was not prepared for.
So after the opening title, it's been an unspecified amount of time since that, like, opening setup. Like, I got the vibe that it had been maybe a couple weeks at least.
At least a couple of weeks, because they might even specify, because they were discussing going to Sweden during the summer in the first scene,
right, in the restaurant,
and now they're in the week or so before they go to Sweden or something, you know, in the week or two leading up to that. So it's probably been at least a month, I would get. Like, they were probably in the middle of the semester or something.
Yeah.
Because she said she didn't finish the semester, so they were like in the middle of semester.
Right.
And then now it's
so
it's probably like a month or two.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
Well,
to the point
maybe longer, because isn't it winter in that opening sequence?
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it has to be long enough to get to
Well,
Midsommar.
but it could be, depending on where they are, which I don't remember, it could have been early spring. Like, it could have been spring semester and just like still cold, snowy wherever they are.
Right.
Like, I don't know where they were necessarily.
But it's probably been a couple months or something. One of the details that we see in one of these early scenes, the giant painting, or like probably an art print that she has in her apartment of the blonde girl kissing the bear's nose.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did see that.
Which is a John Bauer piece, whom I love.
Yeah.
I love his artwork.
Yeah, gnarly
It's
art.
very like fairy tale. And I think he might be
He's
Swedish.
Yeah. But very fairy tale, but also like very like nightmare-y.
Yeah.
Like kind of feeling.
It's like nightmare-y, but not like typical horror stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess not super horror, but I mean, I don't know. It's fairly creepy, I guess. Like, a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it has.
The longer you look at his pieces, the more kind of dark and disturbing they become.
I don't even think you have to look at them that long. I'm just scrolling through right now, and most of them look like fairly like.
Yeah, he paints a lot of like trolls.
Yeah, and it's like dark forests and
like monsters from that like era branch of folklore.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the scariest stuff I've ever seen by any stretch, but it's a little like kind of creepy.
So Danny and her boyfriend Christian is his name.
Christian. Yeah.
Very on the nose name.
Yeah.
So they're still together despite him talking about wanting to break up with her.
Yeah,
at the beginning.
Not to her, but
to his friends. But they're still together and obviously having not a great time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like one scene specifically. So she finds out about Sweden. Well, she finds out for sure that he's planning to go to Sweden while they're like at a party.
Yeah.
And she's like, well,
you didn't tell me.
Yeah, she's like, you didn't tell me you were going. I know we talked about it, but you didn't tell me you were actually going.
Yeah.
And then, so she's upset with him, and rightfully so, I think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
For not mentioning that to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he's like, well, I'm just going to leave. And he starts to go, and she's immediately like starts backtracking and is like, no, just sit down with me. Sit down and talk to me. Come on, please sit down with me. And I was like, oh, I've been this girl.
Yeah. No, it's for sure. The social interactions, particularly early in this film, before things get like completely nuts, are painful in their realism.
Yeah.
For sure.
I also noticed mostly in these like opening scenes, but it does come back later, a very heavy use of reflections.
Yeah.
And like we watch a lot of people
have
in
conversations
reflections.
in mirrors.
Yeah. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, there's a lot of ways you can take that. I definitely think it's usually we're watching, almost always, we're watching Danny talk to other people, and she's either she or the other people are in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So like she's always the one removed. And I think the idea, because it's one time we see it for sure talking to her boyfriend in like the bedroom. And then the other specific time that I have a vivid memory of is when she's in their apartment. Yeah, chit-chatting, and there's a big mirror like over like the fireplace or something. I don't know if it's the fireplace. There's a big mirror on the wall, and she's like standing in the doorway, and we're looking at the wall with the mirror, and they're all like sitting on the couch, and we see her in the mirror basically. And I think like there's obviously lots of ways you can read it, but I think the most obvious one, kind of surface level, that makes the most sense is she's removed. She's not in the shot necessarily with any of these people, and so she's isolated from her boyfriend, from this friend group,
Yeah.
from all of them. She's not integrated into this group. It's always she's kind of looking through.
She's like on the outside looking
in. And so I think every time we see her having these conversations and we're framing her through a mirror where she's not literally in the room like she is, but like through our viewing of it, she's not in the frame with them.
Yeah. She's in her own separate, smaller frame.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I think, again, there's probably other interesting interpretations of that, but that kind of comes across to me as the most obvious with where the story goes and the fact that she has lacked the support and has always felt kind of separate from this friend group, from her boyfriend, and that she is like an outsider kind of intruding or whatever. I think that's kind of the visual imagery they're going for there. So during that conversation in the her boyfriend goes to do something and she sits down and she's talking to the Swedish guy who's taking them to Sweden, which I can't remember his name.
I think it was Pelle.
Oh yeah, because his brother's name's like Ingmar.
Yeah.
And they're like chit-chatting, and at one point he brings up what happened to her family. He goes, "Oh, I just want to say I haven't talked to you. I just want to say I'm sorry, blah blah blah." And this kind of triggers her, and she ends up having a panic attack. And she runs into the bathroom, and we get this really cool transition where she runs into the bathroom, and the camera goes over the top of the door frame into the bathroom, and then as it passes through the door frame and we follow her into the bathroom, it transitions into the bathroom of the airplane on the flight, where she is also having a panic attack, dealing with the whole situation of this travel and this big thing. And, so she's still having these panic attacks. It's just a really clever way, I thought, really cool visual way, to show, and very shorthand way to show, okay, we've moved forward in time.
Yeah.
She's still dealing with the exact same thing she was a week ago or whatever this was. Super clever visual storytelling there that I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think that's the first time we see her have a panic attack.
Yeah. I mean, assuming you don't count like right after she finds out her family's dead. But yeah, that doesn't count. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily count that.
Yeah. So if it wasn't already abundantly clear that this is an incredibly vulnerable person that we're watching.
Yeah.
It's now very clear.
Yeah. And she and you even got that vibe prior to the whole thing with her family, that she is not, like a perfectly in harmony, happy person, like who's just like living life and loving it prior to this tragic event. She's dealing with a lot and is already sort of probably, again, wouldn't surprise me if she was already a person who suffered from anxiety and panic attacks prior to.
Yeah. Well, and in the scene way earlier when she's talking to her like unidentified friend or whatever on the phone, we see her take some kind of prescription medication.
It's Ativan, I believe, which is, I think, anxiety. I believe it's Ativan, because we do see the label. It's for seizures, but it can also be used to treat anxiety. So it's lorazepam. The brand name is Ativan. I think that's what she was taking. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, my guess, some sort of anxiety medication. But they finally land in Sweden, and they're on their way to meet up with Pele's commune, and we get this shot of them driving down this road, and they're passing into. There's like a banner or something.
Yeah, there's like a sign, something over
the road, and we get this shot where and I was like, boy, this shot is everywhere these days. The camera flipping upside down as someone drives under the camera and then flipping around. And now this one goes even a step further, and it flips upside down and stays upside down as they're driving for a while. And then after a little bit, it then re-flips around.
Yeah.
And it's a very like long kind of disorienting sequence, intentionally so. We're passing over,
crossing the threshold.
We're crossing the threshold, and the camera is signifying that to us. But I was wondering, and not that this movie is by far the first to do it, but I was wondering if the popularity, because so much, I mean, freaking, and Stranger Things did it prior to this season, I think at least a couple times, because the whole upside down, that was a thing. But man, so many shows and movies and stuff use that that camera, people going underneath the camera and the camera flipping around upside down as they pass underneath it thing. And I was wondering if this movie popularized that or if it was already popular and I'm just in my timeline. Again, been done plenty of times before this, but
I was actually, during that scene, I was kind of glad that we didn't go see this in the theater because just watching it on our TV made me feel motion sick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that kind of stuff doesn't get me. Huh. Have you ever been to Omnimax Science Center?
I don't think so.
Never been to the Omnimax?
I don't think so.
It's just a big theater at the St. Louis Science Center that they also play IMAX movies there, but Omnimax in particular is a different thing. It's even wider. It's like way bigger than IMAX. It's like almost a surrounding visual. You sit in and the screen wraps all the way around like behind you basically. But that you feel like you're moving. Like when they and I used to love going to movies like those movies when I was younger. They would have all kinds of cool stuff. They did Mount Everest climbing movies. They did like fighter jet, all kinds of stuff. Like nature documentaries, but like with cool camera stuff. But anyways, when you're in that, it literally feels like the seats do not move. It's not like a 4D theater, but it feels like your seats are moving. And I wonder if that would.
I don't know.
Because one of my friends, I remember when I went to the fight, one of the Blue Angels ones or something, he like had to leave and like threw up because he got like motion sick. But like roller coasters don't bother you, so I don't
know. No, but something, and I don't feel like I get motion sick easily, but something about the way that the camera moved in that scene made me feel like dizzy and gross.
I think that was kind of the point. So the fact that worked that successfully on you seems like that was they nailed what they were going for.
Then I have a note that says, I kind of hope Will Poulter dies first. I almost hate him more than knockoff Chris Pratt. That was what I called her boyfriend the whole time.
Oh, Jack, whatever that actor's name.
That
is,
actor's
Jack
name.
something.
He looks like a knockoff
Jack
Chris
Rayner,
Pratt.
I believe is his name. Yeah, I mean a little. He doesn't really.
He's
look that
like
much
a wall-eyed Chris Pratt.
A little. I don't think he looks that much like Chris Pratt, but
please validate me.
He looks like there's somebody else.
It's probably at least partially his facial hair in this movie because he has like Star-Lord like goatee facial hair.
Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, so they get there. They finally arrive, and they first get to this field. And I also feel like this all felt like this had to be like mimicking some sort of story that I wasn't familiar with the details enough, because they get and they like spend a day
just like in a
field and then they go, and this felt like something like a Dante's Inferno style, like you know what I mean? It almost felt like this weird like taking some older story about like some journey where they have to go and wait outside the city gates for a day. Like, it felt like that. And I like where they sit in this field and just trip balls for a day. I thought it was very interesting. But anyways, they're in this field, and the people, as soon as they arrive, they like offer them mushrooms basically. And there's this incredible conversation that Danny is like, well, I just want to settle in first. I don't want.
Yeah, she doesn't want to take drugs right away.
Yeah, she's like, we've been in the car for like 4 hours. I just kind of want to like settle in, and then like in a little bit I'll take some. And all the rest of the guys are like, oh, let's do it. And then her boyfriend is like, oh, I'll wait. And then they're like, oh, and then it's like this awkward, horrible conversation. Like it's so real. Like I've been parts of those conversations. Yeah. Like anytime it just happened. It's not even like anybody's fault necessarily when you're just in a group of enough people and people have differing like, you know, needs and wants in a given moment where you're trying to like figure out what to go eat for dinner or whatever. And it just becomes this awkward, like, what are we? Okay. And it was so painful. And Florence Pugh in that singing is so good. She's so good in the whole movie.
She is. And she does a very, very good people pleaser here, where she really doesn't want to do it. You can tell she doesn't want to do it, but when they all start putting that like pressure on her, she's like, okay, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then he's like, no, and then oh my god, it's just all of it. I was just like, oh god, I've been parts of not in relation to taking mushrooms, but in just like other like so many different things. Of like, oh, when are we gonna do this thing? Oh, well, what if we do it? And then everybody just has, yeah. And again, it's not even anybody's fault. It's just, or like, nobody's even being like intentionally annoying or an asshole or anything. It's just like, it's just a frustration of getting, it's so weird. It was super, like, my soul was cringing into my body watching that conversation.
That secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah. And also the editing in this movie throughout is so unsettling and really well done. The cuts are super abrupt. We get all these very strange cuts when you don't expect them, but not in like a jump scare way, just in like a keeping you off kilter kind of way.
Yeah.
Where you just cut and then we'll cut back. And there, and in this particular moment after they take the drugs, I don't even remember exactly what happens, but something about how, because this is where I have this note, something about how it cuts. I think it like flashes back and forth a couple times and then does a weird thing. And it's just so many different moments throughout the film. The abruptness with which it's edited. And if you, especially if you've done any editing, and I'm sure it's still it's noticeable in a different way to people who aren't editors or don't edit. But just it breaks so many rules of how you would edit scenes.
Yeah.
But very clearly intentionally in order to make you feel uncomfortable and make you feel sort of put you on guard and feel off kilter. And it's really well done. It just feels wrong.
So she has a bad trip while they're doing that, and like tries to go into this little like outhouse where we get our only real kind of jump scare in the movie.
One of the
and
only ones for sure.
It looks like there's something behind her in the mirror.
Not even looks like it. There is the face of her sister.
Yeah.
Her dead sister's like body, like in the mirror over her shoulder. She doesn't see it, I don't think.
But she turns around and looks, I think.
Okay, maybe she does. I couldn't remember if it was just for us or if she did think she saw it or not. But yeah. And that's the only one, but there's no like music sting or anything. It's just like at least
it's
from
just
my memory.
Like there.
She just like sees it, or it's just there.
And then like runs into the woods. And I was like, okay, so some of this is a dream, right? Like she's gonna wake back up under the tree that she was under. I thought that was where that was going.
Well, I definitely thought at least some of it was. I mean, some of it's hallucinate. She's tripping balls. Like some of it's hallucinating. I don't know how much of it's like I think her running into the woods and stuff all actually happened.
No, it definitely did.
Yeah.
Because then when she wakes up, they're like, oh, we finally found you or something like that.
Yeah, but definitely some of the stuff she's seeing is hallucinations. And the movie actually does a really fun, and which I actually don't think I had a note. I have a kind of an adjacent note to it later. But throughout the film, the movie, from the moment they start tripping, like they take the mushrooms the first time, and they're not tripping the whole movie after that. They take drugs on and off throughout, but not like the entire time. But the film constantly from here on out has these subtle effects on stuff that mimics the like the trippy mushroom effects that they should do in this scene, where stuff looks like it's like vaguely moving and pulsing and stuff. And that kind of goes on throughout very subtly, like in the background and stuff in different times. It's not always, but it's like sometimes the trees in the background will be doing this weird thing. And I thought all that was really, again, a good way to like amp up the just unease about everything. When they do actually get to the commune, like the little like village where the commune is, they arrive and this group is like, this little music group is playing like flute music, and it's all. Another thing I really enjoyed is a lot of the music in this is diegetic. Yeah, like a lot of the music you hear throughout the film is actually happening. Not all of it, but a lot of it is happening within the world. Yeah. And the music when they arrive in this scene that this little group is playing is the most like nightmare fuel, and again, very intentionally, at least from the perspective of our filmmakers. For us, the audience, but within the world, it's just like this like discordant. I think that's even the right word. I think my brain found the right word for the first time ever. It's like this discordant, like rising, like And it's like, oh my God, like, why would you play that? Like, other than to make people feel like they're losing their mind. It's horrible.
No. I do kind of want you to Photoshop that one elf from The Amazing Race
Yes,
into that
he does.
scene, though.
He would fit right in there with his little flute. He
Has a teeny little flute.
although their music was much happier in,
Yes.
in Amazing Race.
But I love when they get to the commune, though, because it looks like a fucking butter commercial.
Yeah. Or a Ricola commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like sunshine and green grass and everyone in crisp white outfits.
Yeah.
Not a red flag at
Oh
all.
yeah. As soon as you get there, I'd be like, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
Nope. As soon as I walked in, I'd be like,
I'll make my
leave.
way back down the mountain. Thank you.
Yeah. Nah, I was like, this only ends in. Well, it ends one of two ways. It ends with a really dope drug-fueled sex orgy, or we all get murdered. It's one of the two.
It's one of those two. There's no
and I'm
in
not
between.
taking that chance. I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not taking that risk.
And they meet like the head guy, like the leader or whatever.
Yeah.
When they get there. And did you notice that he says welcome to everyone and then welcome home to Danny?
I did not notice that, but that totally tracks. Totally I did not notice that though. But then they're kind of walking around exploring the village, the commune, and kind of talking to people. And one of them, I can't remember who, somebody is explaining like how they, support themselves and whatnot. And he says that they sell homeopathics among other things. And I was like, that tracks.
Yeah.
That tracks that this fucking death cult is selling homeopathic medicine.
What other kind of medicine do you have when you're in a mountain Swedish death cult?
True. Yeah, no, that's fair. It's just, I that was a line that made me chuckle. If you don't know, homeopathics are nonsense. They're not real things. It's just water. So just a heads up. Do some research, but homeopathic medicine is not actually medicine.
We also see somewhere in this opening, because there's quite a bit of time where they're just kind of like exploring and like seeing new things around this commune. We see the ominous yellow triangle.
Yes.
That no one is allowed into. Yeah, it's a building, but it's literally a triangle.
Yes, because we see it from the front. And where you just see that it's like an A-frame building, and you just see like this big yellow triangle sitting there.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And
you're not allowed in there.
We're not allowed in there. Oh, okay.
All right, great, amazing. Again, I'm leaving. Bye. Yeah. Oh goodness. And then we get as they're walking around and exploring everything, the camera kind of leaves and hangs as our main characters walk away into the distance. The camera hangs and then moves. Tracks sideways down this like tapestry that's hanging out in the field. I don't know what it's like. I don't know where it is or why, but it kind of tracks down this tapestry that has all of these images. And this is another one of those moments.
It looks like a storyboard.
It's like a storyboard kind of deal. And it very clearly is showing, and we don't know exactly what it is, but it seems like it's like some sort of love potion.
Yeah, that's
because I had in my notes here, is that like a love spell or something? Yeah.
Yeah, that's like actual real like folk magic, like folk witchcraft.
Like that specific.
Yes,
like
that specifically, like your pubic hair and your period blood and yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that totally tracks. But yeah, and then it pans over and then the camera kind of goes through all that, which is something that'll happen later. And then it pans over and we see Christian and Danny kind of walking away in the distance after we see that. Again, lots of really cool shots throughout the film.
So while they're there, the group, as well as two other people that Pele's brother brought.
Yeah, I can't remember their names.
Couple. Yeah, I don't remember their names either.
They're British.
Yeah. They're not that important.
No.
So they're all sleeping in this big like bunkhouse.
Yeah.
Kind of.
It's like a big communal like.
Yeah. And he's explaining to them how like the life cycle works.
He's like, you're from age 0 to 16 or 18 or whatever.
It's like It's more, it's like till 36.
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like really
Yeah, it
like
was
much
long. It
later
was
than
like-
you would usually
yeah,
expect.
you're like a child from that age, and you live in the
and you live in this communal house.
And then after that, from 36 to whatever, you're like an elder or something, whatever.
Yeah, he's like, well, you're an adult and you're like a laborer and you work, and then you're an elder from age like 50 to 72 or something like that. And then I think Danny asks like, what happens at 72? And he literally just tells them the truth.
He does, yeah. He turns to them and he runs his finger across his throat and does the thing, and you're meant to take it as him joking, in that moment, but very clearly we find out he is not joking. That is just what happens. He told them the truth. Yeah. Then they go to sit down to their big communal feast for that evening. It's like the first night of the
first night of festivities.
Yeah. Of whatever
and
this
what a festivity it will be
is, which I don't even know if we ever find out what this what this holiday is even called. I'm not even Midsommar.
It's called Midsommar.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, it's the name of the movie. But it's a thing that they only celebrate it every 90 years. They say it's not like
it's not an every year thing.
It's not like an every year thing.
Yeah,
which
I don't know.
For Midsommar, you would think would, or maybe like elements. Maybe like they do some of it every year, but not the whole like sacrificing strangers and stuff thing.
They do a more low key celebration.
Yeah, they do like the feasting and the like 72-year-olds jumping off a cliff, but not like the bringing
sacrifice
in strangers and murdering everybody. Yeah, that whole thing. But anyways, they sit down at this table, and I was like, the table's in a very strange layout, and my brain was like, that is a thing I recognize.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is, and I would not have known this prior to, well, when this movie came out, I would have, because I don't remember when it was. The only reason I would have known what that was is because this was a whole thing at a conservative conference.
Yeah.
In like 2019 or 2020 or something. I don't even remember when it was. But they sit at this table, and it's in this layout that is called an odal rune. I think it's basically Odin's rune, kind of.
And it kind of looks like a Jesus fish.
Kind of, yeah. Vaguely like a Jesus fish.
The Christians kind of stole that.
So vaguely like a Jesus fish. And I was like, but that's a Nazi thing. And now it's used for lots of stuff. Its origins are not obviously.
It was used by Norse pagans first before Nazis co-opted
but like everything, Nazis had to take it. But I was like, but that is very. So there was this whole thing where. Nazi groups and especially neo-Nazi groups have used that symbol as
well as other runes,
as sort of again because they've incorporated a lot of pagan Norse sort of mythology into their shit. But
and we're not happy about it.
It's not a thing that but so I was like, holy shit, because there was a thing where there was a CPAC or something where they had a stage that was that exact same layout.
Yeah.
And there was like a big thing about it because it's like, you guys didn't realize, surprise, surprise. The fucking conservative conference has a Nazi rune as their stage layout. But anyways, it's our first hint. And maybe not our first hint, but it's one of the things. It's a pretty big hint, and it is one of the things that definitely there's. And the movie never gets overt with this, but I think we are meant to read this group as vaguely like sort of
white supremacist.
Yeah. And
in a way, I think that is different from the American flavor of white supremacist.
For sure. Definitely also a little like eugenicist-y, like white supremacist, Aryan-y, for sure. I think we're definitely supposed to read them as, of a white supremacist cult, kind of. Again, not overtly. They never like talk about any of that stuff, like overtly, like explicitly. But Nazis also tend to be, at least when they're trying to hide that stuff fairly well, to the point where, it's a whole thing. It's why right-wing white fascism is so fucking much of a problem, is because they're pretty good at hiding that power level. But anyways, but I was like, oh, okay, all right, I see what's going on here.
Yeah. So then we have some. I went on a whole journey during this scene. So there are two old people at the head of the table.
Yeah.
And I was like, those are the 72-year-olds.
Yeah.
And they do some very creepy throat chanting together. And then they have a drink. They drink out of these little glasses. And I was like, I bet they're drinking poison.
Oh,
they're
you
drinking
thought, yeah,
poison.
right.
Because I didn't know what I hadn't heard anything about this part of the movie at all.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it.
No, that's a total. I actually thought the same thing. That like, yeah, they're like,
yeah, I was like, okay, they're drinking poison. And then they start going towards the cliff. And
well,
I was
but then
like,
because then they move away from the dinner.
yeah, they
scene,
move away
and
from the
then-
dinner scene, and they all go over to this cliff. And I was like, okay, maybe not poison. They're gonna get thrown off a cliff.
Yeah.
But they don't get thrown off a cliff. They jump.
No, because they will. Yeah, they're adherents to the cult. They willingly sacrifice themselves.
And the old woman falls on a rock, and
her whole face explodes.
Whole face is just gone.
It's gnarly.
But I got the impression that she was meant to hit the rock.
Yeah, I think that's the goal.
Yeah, goal
that's
is
the
to
suicide
hit the
rock. Yeah, for sure.
Because then the old man does not hit the rock.
No.
He doesn't nosedive like she does.
No,
he falls
lands
like
feet first.
Yeah, he lands
which is
feet
not
first.
The goal if you're trying to kill yourself.
And his legs get obliterated, but he's still alive. And then they come over with this giant hammer.
Who we saw a guy standing there holding this giant mallet earlier, and you don't. Yeah.
And I feel like pretty confident that it's like his family.
Oh yes, I feel there's never said, but I think the implication because based on the ages and like genders, it feels very clearly like this is like his children or something like that.
Yeah,
their
his children and grandchildren. And they all take a swing and obliterate his face as well.
Yep. It's gnarly. And then after he's very clearly dead, because it is like a cult ritual, they have to keep hitting him.
Yeah.
Like everybody has to take a swing. Like even though he is very clearly dead at this point.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah. But that's not how it works. Yep, for sure. Yeah, that whole scene, it was just insane. Again, I had not had any of this spoiled for me. At this point, I was expecting this kind of, like, once we got to this, I was like, all right, this is what I'm expecting.
Yes.
It's like crazy cult
Yes.
shit, like for sure. So it wasn't like a huge surprise, but it is still a very gnarly scene.
Yeah. So then at that point, knockoff Chris Pratt decides that he's gonna straight up steal Chidi's thesis idea.
Yeah, because Chidi is writing he's an anthropologist.
Yeah.
Or it wants to be an anthropologist. And he's writing a paper, his master's thesis on
this cult.
On this cult, yeah, basically.
Which I don't know why you believed they would let you do that.
Yeah, very strange. You should. That's one of those things where if you're gonna do that, you would need to do that secretly. Like you could.
Secret.
You can't. Why would you think they would just be like, yeah, man? Especially
reveal
after
our secrets to the world.
Post the suicide. Like before that, like sure, if you're like, oh, hey, I want to write a paper about your little commune or whatever.
Ooh, look at all the cows.
Right, yeah, like sure. But once you watch the freaking ritual suicide, you'd have to be like, okay, they probably would not be chill about me like just writing all this out. Like,
no.
Yeah.
So then Danny is understandably been upset by this.
Yeah,
this
the only one
suicide.
Appropriately upset about watching two people 72 years old jump to their death.
Yeah. And
well, sorry, the other two people
the other two are pretty upset.
Yeah, the British people who are like minor characters.
But all the boys that came with Danny are kind of having odd reactions to it.
Yeah, I mean they seem at least initially upset and like like what the fuck, but they get over it pretty quick.
Yeah. So she's upset, and this is where Pele swoops in.
Yeah.
To do a little grooming.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now which I don't think he's aware that he's grooming her per se.
No, yes, he is.
You think so?
He's a full knowing participant in this cult. He knows exactly what he's doing.
All right.
I thought you were going to talk about, because I actually, and here's my hot take. I think despite all of his bad traits, and this is probably a controversial trait, Chris Pratt, Jack Rayner's character, is not like deserving of what happens to him in this movie. He's just kind of a bad boyfriend.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a hot take. I think that's a pretty whatever. But like, and I think a lot of what he does in this movie is just like being a pretty shitty boyfriend, but not like being an active abuser or anything.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he's like, It is, and I think that's one of the things the movie does is like when we get to the end and everything that happens, I think like you're supposed to be like forget that he wasn't actually as bad as it feels like he was
Yeah.
over the course of the film. Like by the end, you feel like, God, this guy's just an asshole, and he is an asshole, but he's not like a maliciously abusive person. I don't
Right.
think, you know what I mean? He's just a bad boyfriend who's 23 years old. It's just like not a good supportive boyfriend. And it's like, I don't know. But anyways, I think on the other side, I think Pele knows exactly what he's doing. I got the vibe.
How do I even explain this? I think he does, but like not in like a mustache twirling sense.
Well, I think he's also a true believer.
Yes, because he is like a true believer and like
Right.
he's so deeply ingrained into this cult. I think he knows what he's doing, but I don't think he thinks it's wrong.
True. I would agree with that.
Is my point.
I would agree with that. I think he, but yeah.
I think he thinks he's doing the right thing.
I think he's doing the right thing, but I think he's aware he's manipulating her.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Whereas I think in kind of in juxtaposition to Christian's character, I think he knows that he's kind of not a good boyfriend.
Yeah.
But I also don't think he realizes that he's as manipulative as he is.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like I think he's like realizes he's like not a great boyfriend and stuff, but is also like doesn't realize that he's as like
emotionally
manipulative as he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's a really interesting kind of juxtaposition between those two characters.
Yeah. And I think part of Christian's thing too is that he just doesn't understand, like, I think he doesn't understand what Danny brings to the table and how that like clashes and mingles with his kind of like immature, like not understanding that he's being emotionally manipulative.
Yeah. His biggest sin is that he's just really immature and unself-reflective. Like he just doesn't realize
and selfish.
And selfish. Yeah, he is selfish. And he just doesn't realize what he's doing. And I think it's a very powerful because of that. Because I think a lot of I think people, regardless of gender, can identify that in themselves, especially from their younger years, of just before you were as self-reflective, of seeing the way, you know, not realizing how you can influence and affect people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an easy thing to fall into and not even realize.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. But so he like it just does a little bit of grooming in this scene. Basically is like, I don't think knockoff Chris Pratt deserves you. Kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't say exactly that, but that's kind of the gist of
Essentially, yeah. And I will say, like, I don't. We're probably a little over halfway through the film at this point, and this movie is like 2.5 hours long. And I at this point, I was like, you know, it's for a film that is 2.5 hours long, and not a whole lot happens, at least to this point, other than like the in terms of like excitement. Like the suicide scene is like the most exciting quote unquote thing that has happened. After like an hour and a half into the film, you know, after a feature length movie, not a whole lot of really crazy, exciting things have happened, but the film is just riveting. And I really think so much of this falls on, I don't think she was even nominated for anything, on Florence Pugh. I think she's just, is that how you say it? I always say it like that. And I like Pugh.
I think
is it
so.
Pugh?
I have no idea.
I don't know. I hate that. It's like, I hate, if it is Pugh, I do not like that. It's just a weird, I think it's like a French thing, but she is just so good and carries this movie. It's not like I say she carries it. It's a good movie.
Everyone else, and
everybody's
else
great.
Is very good too.
It's a very good movie, but her performance is so pivotal.
Yes, and she does a lot of very effective, very subtle acting.
Yeah,
throughout the course of this film.
Yeah, I've been a huge fan of her since we saw her in Little Women. Yeah, but yeah, she's just everything I've ever seen her in. She's incredible.
So then Danny has a dream, and she dreams that the guys she came with are all driving away without her.
And we don't realize
we don't realize it's a dream initially, but it does end up being a dream. But then it was kind of a prophetic dream. Kind of. Because the two other guests, the British people, they want to leave. And then the girl can't find her boyfriend, her fiance or whatever.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, we already took him to the truck stop.
Oh, he left, like, we already took him, like, he left without you.
Right.
Which...
Oh, so prophetic in relation to them?
Yeah, prophetic in relation to them. Yeah, not necessarily in relation to her.
Gotcha.
But it is it's kind of a prophet, even though we find out he didn't actually leave.
Yeah.
But then that, like... that the dream and then that happening like sets her kind of down this new path of like being resentful.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about a little bit in a minute. I have a bunch of notes here
because
we find out a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of new stuff about this cult. We find out that they assign jobs to people based on traits that they show as kids.
Yep. Again, very like sort
which
of
is very like fashy
dystopian eugenics type of a little bit of a Brave New World, right?
Where a little bit of a Brave New World kind of a thing. Very like predestination kind of a thing.
Yeah, or just genetic destiny. Like the idea of like, you know, whatever we can identify as a child what you should be forever. And again, in Brave New World that's based on like genetically what they not
that we don't kind of sort of do that in our society.
And
we just do it in a fun way.
Yeah, and it's all again a clouded reflection of society.
Yeah. And then I can't remember what exactly the context was of this, but they find out, I think somebody's like asking questions to one of the other like cult members, just like about how their society works. And they say something about like, it's when they're talking about like how they avoid like inbreeding.
Yes.
Within this small
insular
community.
Christian or Cheaty or somebody asks like, hey, how do you know, there's not that many. I think it's Christian. It's like, there's not that many of you guys. How do you like, do you have issues with inbreeding or whatever?
Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, we're very careful about it. And the elders have to approve, every pairing and blah, 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 blah. And then they have like an offhand thing they say about like, we also introduce new bloodlines every so often. And I was like, aha, Pele wants Danny to be his mate.
Yeah. Also, anytime anybody says the word bloodlines, just get the fuck. That's just the worst possible red flag. Just get the fuck out of there.
Then Danny goes to help the other women make meat tarts. At which point I was like, meat tarts, more like Simon tarts.
Simon, that's the...
that was the name of the British guy who purportedly was taken to the train station. I don't know if they actually were Simon tarts.
Well, I don't think so, because we see him later.
We see his body later.
Yeah, and it seems to be intact.
It does not look like he has been harvested.
I say intact. It's very much not intact.
It's not intact.
But it doesn't seem to be missing like meat or anything. Yeah.
But then we find out, for all of the talk about bloodlines and being careful to avoid incest, that so they have a prophet in every like generation or whatever, who is who like comes up with their new like holy text or whatever,
who basically just like and we see this character several, and I can't Orin or something, I can't remember the name of this character, which is a thing. That's a thing I would be interested to see to watch a couple of video essays on. It's my understanding this is also Hereditary makes use of like characters, one specific character that and I don't even know the right way to describe it, who you would say maybe has some sort of physical disabilities or something like that, is kind of a recurring theme in Ari Aster's films. And I don't know enough about it. Feels like there could be something problematic there. I don't know. It also could be commentary on that. I'm not sure.
Well, see, in this one particularly, and I don't know anything about her.
Right, yeah, I don't either.
So I can't put this into the context of like his larger body of work. Right. But I felt like in this specific film, because what we find out is that they purposefully engineer these prophets.
Yeah.
Who are, the person that we see has like a severe like physical
deformity,
and it's implied like mental disability as well.
Of some sort, yeah.
They
literally just sit and like scribble in the book, like finger paint basically in the book like all day.
And we find out that they purposefully breed these prophets through incest.
Yeah. And it definitely ties back to historically, like the characters you see, at least in historical dramas of like prophetic characters from like Norse and like Roman and stuff societies, where it's like it's also like some character with physical or mental disabilities or whatever, who like lives out on the edge of town, who they like. I'm thinking of Vikings in specific. The prophet character in Vikings, it is a very similar, like, again, surface level visually looks similar to the character in this, and I'm not sure. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
But like in this specific film, I interpreted it as a commentary on I don't know what the name of the trope is, but that specific trope of like what's the right word for it? It's not deifying, but like it's somewhere between deifying and infantilizing someone with like mental disabilities.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh, they're so like, unclouded. They can see things clearly because they're not tied down by society, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Kind of like your characters like Rain Man, or even Forrest Gump to some extent.
That's what I'm thinking of. And I interpreted it as like a critique on that trope. No, I don't know that we see enough of that character.
I don't know if we see enough of it. I could see that, though, because knowing that they specifically intentionally create this, they intentionally breed this person to be that way in order to have their prophet, quote unquote. It definitely I think you can definitely read it as a critique of the way that society on a larger scale, again, deifies isn't the right word, but
it's like between deifies and infantilizes. Yeah,
it really is.
But I don't know the
both.
word for it, or if there even is a specific word for it.
Yeah.
So they all sit down to dinner to eat the meat pies that they were making earlier. And we see Danny kind of stand up to Christian for the first time in the entire movie, where she's like talking about like how Simon purportedly just left, and Christian was like, well, I'm sure he had a good reason, blah 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 blah, and she's like, I could see you doing that.
She's like, I could see you doing that.
Which is probably correct. And then Christian finds some pubic hair in his meat pie, pan to the redheaded girl.
Looking at him creepily.
Who's been kind of creeping around him for the whole movie.
She definitely wants his seed, shall we say.
Cut to later that evening, we see Chidi. This is not his name, in case you're confused. It's the actor who plays Chidi on The Good Place.
He's got 3 names. William something something. Hold on. I'll find it. William Jackson Harper.
And I think his name in the movie is actually Josh, but I just called him Chidi.
I think it is Josh, but I called him Chidi because he will always be Chidi to me
and he's an academic in this movie too.
He's not even that different of a character. Well, he is because he's like an asshole in this, but
but he's less of an asshole than the other guys.
A little bit less, but he's still kind of an asshole. But he's a little bit less of an asshole.
He's more just like
a passive,
like self-absorbed kind of.
Yeah, he's self-absorbed. He's got his own thing going on, and he's definitely the asshole by non-action.
Yes. Yeah.
Kind of deal where he doesn't really call out his asshole friends for any of their shit or anything like that.
But we see him getting to bed wearing his shoes, and I was like, oh, he knows what's up. He's like, I'm gonna wear my shoes in case I have to run into the forest. But actually what he
No.
wanted to do was sneak into the temple and take pictures of the holy book.
Because he had talked to the leader, one of the holy leaders earlier, and was like, hey, they showed him the book, and he's like, hey, can I get some pictures of this or whatever? And they're like, no. And it's like, why would you even ask?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. But yeah, he wants to go get pictures of their holy book. But as he's in there, he's snapping some pictures, and then the door opens, and he's like, oh, shit. And then he looks up, and he thinks it's Mark, right? Isn't that his name?
Will Poulter's character
Sid from Toy
who's
Story.
been missing for a while.
Who's been missing. They haven't seen him. Like he
went off with this girl, and they hadn't seen him
earlier.
since.
Earlier he peed on a sacred tree, and everybody got mad at him, and they were like, all right, whatever. Which also that whole scene, the whole peeing on the sacred tree thing, he even why would you not just go for? He's just in the middle of everybody. Like that tree is like in the middle. Like it's not far enough away to where I would, if I was gonna go like use, because you're out in the middle of nowhere. I would walk a little bit further away into like the actual woods.
Yeah, but he's an asshole.
I get it. It's just like you fucking dunce.
He is the one who wears the jester's hat.
Yes, he is the jester. Yeah,
the fool.
Sure. Yeah, the fool. At the end. But yeah, anyway, so he's been missing, and they're like, well, he went into the woods with that girl, who knows? But he walks in, seemingly, and Chidi is like, oh, it's you or whatever. And then he's like, wait a second, and then Chidi gets clubbed in the back of the head by the giant mallet.
Yeah.
And dies. Well, it seems basically dies. And then we get a shot of the person who walked in, and it is not in fact Mark. It is in fact one of the cult members. I don't know if we ever know who.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever actually like explicitly.
It might be that
who
girl that was. I don't know. I don't know if it ever says who. It's hard to tell because we only see their eyes. But it is one of the cult members wearing Mark's face as a mask. And it's like, oh my god. All right. Holy shit.
Yeah. So then like the next day, obviously half the group is missing. And Christian's like, oh, well, we don't associate with him, and I hope the book gets returned and whatever.
Yeah, Christian's like, oh, I go, Chidi must have stole the book. Oh no, that's terrible. He's an asshole. Yeah, just immediately throws him under the bus.
Yeah. But then they send Danny. They're like, oh, you're gonna do
like a maypole dance, basically.
You're gonna be with the women today.
Yeah.
And they give her her own little cult member dress.
Yeah, and crown.
Very cute.
From the cover of the movie.
Yes, and they give her her little flower crown, and then she does the maypole dance to crown the May Queen.
Yeah,
the May Queen is the last girl standing.
I don't think that's the way that the maypole dance works, right? Normally it's like who dances longest.
No idea.
I think it's just like you just wrap the ribbons around it and then like it's over or whatever. But yeah, their version of it is you dance until one of you drop, and then whoever is still dancing at the end, the last is like the queen or whatever.
Yeah. And I will admit that dancing looked very intoxicating.
I mean,
fun.
To be fair, they do drink something.
Yes, they drink some special lemonade.
Yeah,
beforehand, but looked fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And then at that point, I figured out where they were going with Christian's character. I was like, they want him to get that redheaded girl pregnant before they kill him.
Yeah.
And then I was right.
Yes, you were right.
Because they take him into like a ritual chamber.
Yeah.
More on that in a minute.
More on that momentarily.
So Danny's still dancing, and for a minute she's like, I wish I spoke Swedish, and her friend is like, you are speaking Swedish, and I was like, but is she actually speaking Swedish? I don't know any Swedish, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then she gets crowned May Queen.
She wins, yeah.
Yeah, she wins.
Everybody else
was it down. Rigged? Maybe.
Possibly.
But they crown her May Queen, so she gets an even bigger flower crown.
Yes.
At this point.
Gigantic,
yeah.
It almost looks like a almost like an Easter basket.
Yeah.
It's like a little basket with a handle, but it sits on her head, basically.
Sits on her head, and one of the flowers is pulsating.
I hate that. There's one flower in the middle that has like a black center. That
it's like a black-eyed Susan or a sunflower or something.
Periodically, like pulsing, like getting bigger, and I hate it. I hate it a lot. Not a fan.
And then they put her on like a platform.
Yeah.
And they hoist her up, and she's standing on this platform, and they carry her off. Also, Pele kisses her.
Yeah.
In this scene, like full on, like obviously romantic. But they're carrying her away on this platform, and Christian is just like standing in the background watching them literally carry her away from the last remnant of her old life.
Yeah.
Very subtle visual language.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much going on throughout this movie. There's so many, like, it's all so clearly symbolic, but my brain at times, and like in the intervening days, we watched this like 4 days ago. In the intervening days, I've definitely, which is always the case, but I've definitely come to like have opinions and feelings about more of the stuff than I did as we were watching it. But during the experience of watching it, so much weird shit is happening that I definitely had like, I don't know what to make from make of a lot of this, but is creepy and well made, like, and like interesting. But in the moment, I had a hard time. Not everything. There was definitely stuff where I was like, okay, I get what's going on here. I get what the kind of message thematically what we're doing here. But there was quite a bit of stuff throughout where it's like some of this just seems like it's weird for the sake of being weird. And maybe that's still the case. I don't know. It was just one of those things where it's like I'm trying to like suss out symbolically what each of the different elements mean. And some of them I was able to, and other parts I was like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this like relates to thematically or sort of like in relation to like, and I think that's kind of the point. In the intervening days since watching it, overall I've had a much, I feel like I have a more complete idea of kind of thematically what the movie was going for, but there's still like moments throughout where I don't know like if I would be able to tell you what that meant. Like what I was supposed to get from this other than like, that's weird.
Yeah. So then Christian gets taken in for the mating ritual, which was something.
Yes.
Also had no idea there was full frontal nudity in this movie. There is. We do see peen. In fact.
And bush.
Yes.
Yep, for sure.
All those things. And then I was like, I wonder if that redheaded chick just happened to be the one ovulating at the time.
Could be.
She drew the lucky lot.
Yeah, very well could be. But there's this big sex scene where they bring him in and to have sex with her, and she's laying there like on a bed of flowers.
Yeah.
And all of these other women are like standing around in a semicircle around her. Watching
all the mothers and the crones are gathered around
but they're not all
maiden.
old. Like there's younger, like it's just like it seems like it's kind of a mixture of women from the group or whatever. But they are generally older, but but they're not all like the old women, I don't think. At least it didn't seem to me. Anyways, so they're having sex and like they're like mimicking the sounds that the girl is making and stuff, and it's all very weird and awkward. And then at one point, one of the women comes down and literally starts like singing to the girl he's having, who I believe his name is Maya. Yeah. Like as they're having sex, and it's just his face. He looks up at her like, "What the fuck is going on?" And I will say this scene is definitely like sexual assault of some form on him. Yeah. Like he's also was drugged prior to this. Yeah. I believe. And so I do think also this scene in particular he is a bit of an asshole. But I think the movie here is supposed to be kind of depicting, I don't even know necessarily what to get from it, but I think we are supposed to be off put by this in a way that is painting him as being a victim of like sexual assault here or rape or whatever you want to call it. It is a very strange power imbalance sexual dynamic happening that I think the movie wants us to reflect on the fact, because like the scene where she comes down and is like singing and like touching him, and his reaction like initially makes you laugh
Yeah.
because it's so silly.
Yeah.
But I think the movie wants you to do that and then think a little bit more and be like, what this is fucked up.
Yeah.
Like they got him on, they like fucking drugged him. And then essentially like, and again, it's not like anybody forced him to have sex necessarily, but it is, the whole thing just feels off in a way that is, I think we're supposed to interpret as like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
And then they 100% let Danny see it on purpose.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of set up like, oh, it's an accident. She accidentally saw into the mating ritual chamber, but they absolutely let her see that on purpose. So then she starts having a panic attack.
Yeah.
And I actually really liked this scene where she's having the panic attack. I found it like kind of cathartic.
Oh, yeah. No, this is a great scene.
Where like she starts having this panic attack and all of the women like
she
gather,
like runs into
the sleeping place.
Quarters, yeah.
And she's having a panic attack and all of the women that she'd been with like gather around her and start like instead of trying to like shush her and or calm her down or get her to stop, they all start matching her screaming and like moving with her and screaming and crying and just like this very like primal release of emotion. And it like that part particularly got me thinking about what I feel like one of the pieces of commentary being made by this movie about the way that the structure of modern society deprives people of community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of support, which is something that Danny really, really needed before she came here. And because she was not getting that, then this cult was now able to step in and provide that for her.
Yes, I think this movie very clearly is telling us, is showing us throughout the course of this film that this cult has a lot of terrible things going on. They're kind of vaguely white supremacists, vaguely eugenicists. They fucking murder. They're ageist. They murder 72-year-olds for no reason. Or not murder them, but basically murder them. And there's all these, and they fucking murder random people. They bring like lure people in and murder that. Like there's all kinds of fucked up things. But the movie is also presenting us a complex portrayal in the sense that I think very much we're supposed to get the feeling that this cult is doing some things very right. The way that they provide community and the way in which that community provides a release for people who haven't been able to find it other places. In particular, Danny, or like not in particular, like she's the only one in this instance, because everybody else just gets murdered. But and this scene I think is one of those moments where it is one of those things where it's absolutely something that she is getting that she needs that she has never gotten anywhere else.
No, absolutely. And this is like one of the primary reasons, I said at the beginning that I was going to say relatable content a lot during this. And like I found this scene to be relatable content as well. Because, Danny she's our point of view character. She's the one that we're meant to be following and identifying with. And I think when you can identify with her and when you've been maybe in situations in your life where you've had to spend a lot of time like swallowing your emotions and setting your needs aside because you feel like you have to serve the people around you, and they're not meeting your emotional needs, but you feel like you have to be okay with that. Then to see her like have this moment of catharsis is also very cathartic as the viewer.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. It's one of the things that makes the movie so interesting is that it does provide that very nuanced, complex portrayal of this.
Yeah.
And it's not, there is no simple, this good guys and bad guys. And
No.
nobody is a good guy or a bad guy in this.
No.
Everybody is both.
Yeah,
kind of.
everybody is complex and messed up, and I've seen a bit of the discourse.
Yeah, there's been a
about
lot of
this. There's
discourse
been
about
discourse.
this movie.
And in particular, I watched a TikTok about it a few days ago.
Yeah.
About how, you know, there's been that kind of reaction to this movie that's like, oh, good for her, girl boss kind of.
There was an initial reaction, and I say initial. There was one reaction, which was, yeah, like you said, girl boss, good for her, queen, slay.
Yeah.
And then there was the reaction to that reaction, which is, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
right.
This is not a happy ending. This is not a good thing for her.
Right.
Not girl boss slay.
And it's not.
No.
But when you identify with her, you can still feel that catharsis from watching this.
Yeah.
And basically the thesis of this TikTok was that that's because the movie is doing both things at the same time.
The answer is that both.
Yes, the answer is both.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. And it's doing both. And it is, I think one of the main things that we're supposed to get out of this is that, you know, we were just kind of talking about this the other day, is, and this is like the big scene that cements it when she has that panic attack, is the ways in which, because I think another thing we're supposed to get out of it is the way in which, like, cults and not even just cults necessarily, but any group of people or even individuals, but particular cults can use trauma, can use abuse histories in people to recruit, to exploit people and propagate more abuse. Like, that is kind of what we end up with in this situation is this cult takes a person who was underserved by society at large and by her friends and by her boyfriend and all of that, and was a victim of incredible trauma and abuse, maybe not incredible abuse, but incredible trauma and mild abuse, shall we say, and are then able to use that to pull her in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that, like, your point and my point go hand in hand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of, like, you know, when we structure our society and our communities in such a way that we're depriving people of that sense of community and of agency and of emotional catharsis, then that leaves them vulnerable to these bad actors and manipulative people who also want to be abusive.
Yep.
So back to Christian. Now at this point, he has left the mating ritual and is understandably wigging out.
Yep.
And he's running around buck naked. And no, I shouldn't say that. That has a bad history. He's running around naked. Look it up.
Okay, I was unaware
it's,
of that.
It's one of those ones that I still like. And it's still like kind of in my vocabulary, so I still say it occasionally. But it does have like a racist history.
Okay.
So he's running around naked, and sees Chidi's leg just sticking out of the ground. At this point, so we know Chidi's dead.
Yeah.
And I was like, really, like, y'all should not have gone on a jolly holiday to visit a cult during an extremely important religious period. That should have been a thing that set off alarm bells.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be honest.
Yes, for sure. But he does, after he barges into this other little hut, he finds Simon's body.
Yeah.
Strung up in this hut, and they did the fucking blood eagle to him. The thing from it's a real thing that is debatable whether or not it actually ever happened, but it is a real thing in the sagas that is mentioned or something like that. But it's debatable. Historians debate about whether or not it was actually ever done or if it's more of like a mythological thing. But it happens in the show Vikings, and it's the blood eagle is this thing where they, while you're alive, they cut open your back and pull your lungs out of your back to form like wings, basically, and that's why it's called blood eagle. Anyways,
so they did that to him.
They did that to him, yeah. But he's dead in that. But he's actually breathing still.
Oh, was
did
he?
you not notice that? It's really creepy. He's still
No.
breathing.
Oh.
Like very minimally, and I thought he was gonna like move, like when he like puts his face under
I was
him.
kind of expecting him to move, and then when he didn't, I assumed he was just dead.
I swear you can hear very subtle like
Oh,
wheezy breathing.
no.
I could be wrong, but I could be wrong about that, but it sure seemed like it. I thought I was hearing that.
But then Christian turns around and somebody blows more drugs into his face.
Yeah, and it like paralyzes
Yeah,
him,
and I
basically.
was like, and you're about to be a bear.
Yep.
Because I knew that was where that ended, but I didn't know how we got there.
Yeah.
So then everyone is gathered together. Danny is the May Queen. She's covered in flowers.
Yes, at this point, on top of her crown now, she is in a gigantic like blanket quilt of flowers that like envelops her entire body.
Yeah.
I think again here, I think visually kind of going back to the cult thing is like almost like a visual representation of the idea of like love bombing kind of maybe to some extent, like this like blanketing her in these flowers. I don't know. Anyways.
So then they do like a bingo to figure out who else is going to be sacrificed. And it's between like Christian and this other guy.
Well, they explain the whole thing. They're like, we got to sacrifice these 9 people or whatever, and we already got these 4, and then the 2 older people, and then Ingmar and this other guy like volunteered. We need 1 more, and it's either this other person from the cult or Christian.
Yeah.
You decide.
Yeah, so the May Queen decides, and we don't know in that moment. Like they don't reveal what her choice is. But then we see Christian being stitched into the bear carcass. Yeah. The bear skin.
Yeah. And then they carry all of the bodies of both the living and the dead sacrifices into the big yellow building.
The ominous yellow triangle.
And then they set it aflame.
Yes.
And everybody...
it goes up like a match because it's just full of straw.
Yeah, and we get this great shot of and it's just horribly creepy and weird and of Danny like hobbling in front of the burning building, just like sobbing like a giant flower slug. Yeah. It's so weird.
Yeah. And it's unsettling too, because then everyone else in that moment is like screaming.
Yeah, well, they're all like mimicking the screams of the it's all very wild.
And then Danny is watching pull in, and we get the famous smile.
Yes.
End film.
Yes, where she's like kind of upset, and then she like vaguely smiles, and then the credits roll.
Yeah.
It's a very good movie. And I think the thing it does best is that it doesn't give you any easy like solid like answers. It's you're not going to come out of it being like, well, this person was obviously correct, or this message was obviously what I was supposed to get out of that.
Yeah.
It's very much a sit and kind of, everybody's good. It has their good and bad things going on, and we're supposed to kind of get mixed feelings about everything that happens and kind of figure out what applies and what doesn't, and take from it what you will. In a way that I think is really compelling. And
and I think the interesting thing too is that like each level of your take on this film is probably right.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
As long as some degree,
at least to some degree. I think the biggest thing is, and this is like the big brain forehead take, but I think the biggest thing is to realize that no single take is right.
Yeah.
I don't think there's
because this movie is doing a lot of things.
Yeah, I think you're wrong if you're like, oh, it's about her like being a girl boss and overcoming trauma, and it just like being like a celebration of that. Like very clearly, it's not only that.
Yeah.
Like if that's your only interpretation of it, like that's not right. But that is there. It's not like you know what I mean. It's not like that's not there.
Right. Well, and I actually also think that it's kind of a good metaphor for the like girl boss, girl power thing, because what it is an illusion of power that she has, which is an apt metaphor.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but and like equally, like if you come out of it going, well, like she's a psychopath, and like how could she do that to him, and blah, like if that's your take, like that's also missing a huge, but like it's just there's too much going on for it to be boiled down simply
Yeah.
to like one of those takes. So as long as you can appreciate that, like,
but if you've only got one take, you only have one piece of the puzzle.
yeah, and just kind of be cognizant of that. And I'm sure we're missing lots of. There's probably even more layers to it than we even got close to discussing, because there's just a lot going on. I'm sure there's tons of other stuff happening that that we, because again, so much of it is symbolic and visual metaphor, and if you're not. And visual metaphor to things from specific culture that is like there's things that you could like, again, like the whole table being the rune, like if you didn't know what that was, that would not mean anything to you really, other than just being like an interesting kind of weird shape for the table. So I'm sure there's other things like that I completely missed. So I just think there's just a lot going on, and if you be humble in your this is true for everything, be humble in your appraisal and takes, but also in particular in this instance, I think that the film requires you to be humble in your appraisal of it, because there's just too much going on for it to kind of be simply boiled down into a single message or whatever. So
yeah, for sure.
Alrighty, that's gonna do it for this bonus episode. I wanted to thank you all very much again for supporting us like you do. It's the best. We appreciate it. Katie, what are we doing next month for our patrons?
Next month is my birthday month.
Yeah.
So it's Ladies' Choice, and we will be watching a film that is seasonal as well as topical to current events. We will be watching Dirty Dancing.
I have not seen Dirty Dancing. I'm excited.
Yeah,
that should be fun. It's one of those ones that I've just never seen, but
a sleepover classic.
Yeah, I would say
for me,
you've probably seen it dozens of times.
I believe I have.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so come back in a month or so. We'll be talking about Dirty Dancing. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies, and
keep being awesome.